I've gone from kyphosis to straight neck in 5 weeks. I came here for the curve correction and that's all great. But really what I got is that the biggest thing for me was that tendon dry needling. About a year ago, where I could only stand up for about 20 minutes a day before my neck would give out, I felt like I was dying. I couldn't function as a human. So I've been suffering for about a year with headaches. I started to get nerve pain behind my eye. I started to get really bad migraines every day. I had a migraine every day for about 6 months, where I just have to go to bed basically at 2 o'clock every day. I could feel this nerve pain, and it wasn't horrendous at that point, but I could start to feel something was deeply wrong with my body. When I would have a flare up at home, I would have to basically go to bed and just see it out for 5 days. I had a few neurological issues, vision issues, headaches, but actually the main issue I had was neck fatigue, and I would literally be able to stand up for maybe 2 hours at a time, and then I'd have to lie down for an hour. When I go for a walk on the beach, I'd feel like my spine was almost like triangles with the points on top of each other. And I just sort of feel like my head just wasn't stable. I felt like I was falling down a well, like cramped, like clutching the sides, and the light was getting smaller and smaller. I'd try and do chin tucks, TheraBand chin tucks, all this type of stuff, but everything just flared the back of my neck. And when people ask me, what's wrong with your neck, it's really difficult to say because I haven't had any noticeable trauma. Then I started to go to neurologists, neurosurgeons, physiotherapists, chiropractors. I genuinely think I've been to over 25 different professionals, and no one was able to accurately diagnose me or really give me any long-lasting help. In fact, most of the therapies that I had made me worse. Either manipulations, strength work that would just flare me up, and I genuinely just felt hopeless. And then I realised that massages and dry needling could get me out of flare-ups and headache. I guess like a lot of these things, you can kind of see lots of people online, but it's always a risk and it's always a gamble. I've taken it was an 11-hour flight over here, and I've had to rent an apartment for a month, but it was genuinely one of the best decisions I've ever made. When you hit the right spots and the muscles start twitching, you just feel like a sense of calmness, and you stand up and those triangles just move to being blocks, like bang, bang, bang. These muscles just have been activated. They just feel awoken, and my head, and it's from 2 minutes wearing head. I've gone from kyphosis to straight neck in 5 weeks. Just felt like nothing has held me in that 3-year period. I've had small little upticks, but nothing has ever been kind of sustainable for me.
Well, you've allowed me to help you to break it. And so, I could tell deep down you really came here, you were ready to get better.
You just feel the back of my head and go, yeah, I can feel this muscle, this muscle, this muscle. And you press it in, we do some needling, and instantly my flare up went. And it was amazing because it reset me so we could tweak again.
We've now only been working together for a total of maybe 2.5, 3 weeks. And you're already able to sit, you're able to walk the beach, you're starting to get hope that you're well beyond the worst days.
After 3 weeks of you tendon dry needling me and then doing the DMX with this head weight, I have today finally, after 2.5 years, felt these muscles just fire up again. And it's instantly, I know it's the right fix. I just feel like, this is the longest I've sat down in 2.5 years.
Hi, I'm Dr. Brian Hutchison, and today Matt has joined me all the way from the UK. Matt, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and just share a little bit about your story up until this point, kind of where you were 3 years ago and how your life was, and what's led you up to coming all the way to Florida to work with me.
It's kind of hard sometimes to put into words the amount of suffering that I've gone through over the last 3 years. And it's kind of just been a cumulative worsening trajectory for me. I've just felt like nothing has held me in that 3-year period. I've had small little upticks, but nothing has ever been kind of sustainable for me. And it really all started, I think it all started with just lots of desk work. And one of the real difficult things is, I'm not hypermobile, I don't have EDS. And when people ask me, what's wrong with your neck, it's really difficult to say because I haven't had any noticeable trauma. I think it's just been, I was running my own business, and we went into lockdown in the UK for nearly a year in total over COVID. and I just really lent into my work. And my daughter was born at the same time, and I think I wasn't getting enough rest at night, combined with doing this 15, 16-hour days behind a computer in a very specific position like that on lots of Zoom calls and hunched over. And it all started with nerve pain. I started to get nerve pain behind my eye. I started to get really bad migraines every day. I had a migraine every day for about 6 months, where I just have to go to bed basically at 2 o'clock every day. And I felt like I was dying, and I just couldn't function as a human. I felt like I'd grown old overnight. And I was at the time I was a 34-year-old man, who was very functionally fit. And then it just progressed, and I didn't realise it was coming from my neck at first. It was all headaches, nerve pain, and then suddenly I got a massage, and they massaged my neck, and it stopped for a couple of days. And that was the first time I realised it was my neck. So then I began. That was about 2 years ago. So I've been suffering for about a year with headaches, and then I realised that massages and dry needling could get me out of flare-ups and headaches. But I'd always slip back after a few days. Sometimes literally the same day it'd fall back. So I started to go to neurologists, neurosurgeons, physiotherapists, chiropractors. I genuinely think I've been to over 25 different professionals, and no one was able to accurately diagnose me or really give me any long-lasting help. In fact, most of the therapies that I had made me worse. Either manipulations, strength work that would just flare me up, and I genuinely just felt hopeless. And put my family through a lot, because really the main issue that I had a few neurological issues, vision issues, headaches, but actually the main issue I had was neck fatigue, and I would literally be able to stand up for maybe 2 hours at a time, and then I'd have to lie down for an hour. So I'd live my life in these short, restricted windows. And there was a time, about a year ago, where I could only stand up for about 20 minutes a day before my neck would give out.
Wow.
So you can imagine what type of restricted life I've had to live as a result of this injury.
It's pretty interesting, because you first noticed kind of like a nerve pain, and then you had some migraines and headaches, and you'd have to lay down by 2 p.m. onward. You were just kind of inactive. Like, you couldn't show up to, work, to help your family, to do things that you like to do. And tell us, how did this, when it was at its worst, which we've now only been working together for a total of maybe 2.5, 3 weeks, and you're already able to sit, you're able to walk the beach, you're starting to get hope that you're well beyond the worst days. But, as you were going through this period from COVID onward, how did this affect your work and in your home? And
so, this kind of came about at a really pivotal, important time in my life that it just pulled the rug from underneath me. So I'd worked in finance and banking for, my whole career was in that. I did a decade in banking, and, although obviously it has its advantages, I felt like I wasn't really feeding my soul, and I've always felt like I like building things, So I decided to start a company, a tech company, a mobile app that serviced charities in the UK. So people could swipe through charities, they could search for charities they care about, and the selling point of the business was that you could make one single donation and disperse it to multiple charities within a portfolio. And we serviced 20,000 charities by the end in the UK. And one of the journeys, so we raised external investment, we raised about $1 million. And then I went on to Dragon's Den, which I think the US version Shark Tank, and we set a 19-season record where we had all 5 dragons wanting to co-invest as a group. 4 million people watched it on the night, 6 million people on repeat. It was kind of an amazing moment of my career where, for a few days it felt like the nation was talking about my company. But interestingly, in the background, I could feel this nerve pain, and it wasn't horrendous at that point, but I could start to feel something was deeply wrong with my body. And, I had the kind of world at my feet, and then through no mental restriction, through physical restriction, one of the big side effects of this was I literally, it sounds not real, but I couldn't sit down. So, I then started to convert to standing desk, but I'd stand all day. and then I would struggle to stand. So I would be having to lie down and do Zoom calls with investors and staff, and I'd have to have my camera off, and I just felt like I was falling down a well, like clutching the sides, and the light was getting smaller and smaller. And ultimately I had to exit the business, and it wasn't successful, and it could have been very successful, I think, if I remained healthy. And so fortunately I haven't lost my family, who have been amazing through this, but I felt like I've lost a lot. I kind of spent a decade building something that I lost as a result of this. So it's had a really big impact on me, really big emotional impact.
Thank you for sharing that. And now that we've been together for almost about 3 weeks, share a little bit about how this time has been here in Florida, about some of the things that you're able to do now, and what you're looking forward to as you head back home in just another week and a half or so.
It was important to me. I asked you to do this video because the reason I watched one of your videos of a man that had quite similar symptoms to me, I think, of lying down all the time, and it was important to me to, and I guess like a lot of these things, you can kind of see lots of people online, but it's always a risk and it's always a gamble. I've taken it was an 11-hour flight over here, and I've had to rent an apartment for a month, but it was genuinely one of the best decisions I've ever made. And I never really looked at it like a cost. It's just an investment to get my life back. And it's just been, to be totally honest, as I'm sure lots of people who have a similar thing to me, we get kind of a lot of scar tissue from people saying that they can cure us, and actually they can't, and they don't really understand it. Even people that say they specialise in necks don't really understand what we go through. And I have to say, I was hopeful but dubious. And I decided that I wanted to throw everything at this, and I didn't want to come for a week. So we said, right, I'm going to come for 5 weeks. I got some PRP in my neck, some regenerative medicine, and then we've worked every day for the last 3 weeks, and it's just been like, physically it's been amazing for me. I guess we'll probably talk about the treatment in a second, but I think one of the things I want to say is like the mental offload of seeing someone every day that I can, like a coach, like we try something, I go home and I can kind of feel something tighten up here, okay, that's not right, and I come back and we do the DMX again and you tweak it, and it's kind of a small iterative path to me getting better, and it's been life-changing. I mean, what I struggled with is I knew that the back of my neck is basically holding, this is an non-anatomy talk, right? I don't get this, but the back of my neck was holding up my head, and I just knew I had no support from these muscles in here. And I try and do chin tucks, TheraBand chin tucks, all this type of stuff, but everything just flared the back of my neck. And after 3 weeks of you tendon dry needling me, and then doing the DMX with this head weight, I have today, finally, after 2.5 years, felt these muscles just fire up again. And it's instantly, I know it's the right fix. I just feel like, this is the longest I've sat down in 2.5 years.
That's amazing. Like
15, 20 minutes. I haven't sat down in 2.5 years. These muscles just have been activated. They just feel awoken, and my head, and it's from 2 minutes of wearing a head. So I really can't speak enough of how effective a longer treatment plan. I get people can't come over for that period of time, but for me it's just, it caused me such severe disability. It was like 5 weeks is actually, it's nothing to go and get my life back, which I hope it's not done yet, and I'm not cured, but what I came for is a route out, and I've got more than that.
That's amazing. And you brought up a good point, which was many people will come and I'll work with them for just a couple of days, and they may have a little bit of a positive change, or they may feel a slight flare up, and then maybe they're not sure if it's right for them. But early on, we did get a couple of big changes, but then we had a couple of small worries or small regressions, and being able to work through them over a couple of weeks together, I think, was really instrumental to get you to this point. And Matt, even just comment a little bit, if you will, on that rat wheel of constantly trying to think about how you were going to maintain just barely keeping your head above water, but almost assuming that you were going to stay sick, and how the continued visits each day and just, having a sounding board almost for somebody to help you to acknowledge and recognize the things that are changing, and getting you out of that. What am I going to do at 10:02? What am I going to do at 10:07 in order so that I can just exist, to now feeling like you're absolutely never going to go back to how bad you were?
I mean, we made a joke, but I think you've really made me divorce my true partners, which is Reddit and ChatGPT. But yeah, I mean, I think that mental. I think one of the things I want to say about, and I'm sure people experience this, when I would have a flare up at home, I would have to basically go to bed and just see it out for 5 days. And I remember when we spoke virtually before I came out here, you said, well, I can get you out of, let's see if we can get you out of flare up. And I was going, yeah. And I was like, this guy's never going to be able to do that. And then when I came over here, if we did, because, sometimes we do have to push the boundaries, and I did have a little flare up, I'd go back in, and literally you just feel the back of my head and go, yeah, I can feel this muscle, this muscle, this muscle. And you press it in, we do some needling, and instantly my flare up went. And it just, and it was amazing because it reset me so we could tweak again. Having that was amazing, because what I originally thought was, oh, we can only do 5 weeks work, but actually, it's not 5 weeks work, because if you can reset me back to zero every day, I'm doing like a week's progress every day, so that was amazing. And I think, having a coach that I could come to every single morning, like sometimes I get in my head and go, this isn't working, or this, but then I wouldn't let it rattle me, because I knew I could come and talk to you about it the next day and we'd tweak it. And interestingly, I'd say as the care developed, it started off very physically and like practically, and by the end it was quite psychological, wasn't it? It was a lot of talking around, look, you need to move out of this mindset that you're going to remain unwell and sick. But I think I do that to myself, because I've been unwell for 3 years, and I put it up as a protective mechanism.
Yes.
And I think you breaking that and allowing me to hope that I can get better with a little bit of evidence was critical for me.
Yeah. Well, you've allowed me to help you to break it, and so I could tell deep down you really came here, you were ready to get better. But when we've had this repetitive thought for 3 years that we're sick, and how can we just manage a sickness, it does require some kind of neural rewiring or brain retraining.
Yeah.
And initially, when you came in, you did need somebody to physically stimulate tendons and to give you postural cues and reminders to not fall into this position when you get the first thought of, my neck's not in the right spot.
Yeah.
But as we went on, the thing is that eventually you should be able to manage this on your own.
Yeah.
So I think that a real good doctor will try to find a way to get you well enough and then help you to manage it on your own. And so you've made leaps and bounds of progress. You're walking the beach, you're sitting longer than ever, you're standing, you're meeting a friend that, was also from somewhere near your hometown that you connected with. And you've just been doing so much more. And so I think that the big part, which is scary, was to start to not rely on me, but start to be like, hey, Matt, look at every time that you put this weight on now, you actually feel like the right muscles fire. Yeah. Every time that you do this position, you feel a little bit better. So it's just all those things to give you more and more
100%
power to continue progress even once you go home. Matt, tell me a little bit, when you came here, you were kind of in the mindset of, I have to strengthen my neck, And we did find that on one level, I think C1, C2, you had, about 5 millimeters of instability to the right, and we knew that you kind of fell down to that side a little bit more. But how did your mindset around strengthening the neck change as we've gone through care?
Yeah, this was a real eye-opener for me, and I think, to be honest, like, when I reflect on it, I don't think I came here enough with an open mind. I think I came here because, this is the guy that does the standing curve correction, and I can put weights on it, it can strengthen me out of it. Actually, and it's hard to understand, it was hard for me to understand, but when you talk about stability, that's what I feel now without having to do the direct strengthening. And I explained it as when I go for a walk, along the beach, I feel like my spine was almost like triangles with the points on top of each other, and I just sort of feel like my head's just wasn't stable. And we did. I mean, we did. I have had a lot of dry needles. We did a lot of dry needling, but at first it's a little bit uncomfortable. But then you sort of learn to enjoy it, because it actually, when you hit the right spots and the muscles start twitching, you just feel like a sense of calmness, and you stand up, and those triangles just move to being blocks, like bang, bang, bang. And it was almost like there's a wind sail, behind my head. And I just felt stable, and I hadn't done any strengthening. And then what was really interesting is, once those blocks were on top of each other, and I felt stable, the muscles were starting to wake up again. And I guess my lesson was, if you can't, if you try and strengthen out something again and again, it's not working. Maybe you've got to address the pulling first, and that tendon dry needling. To be honest, I came here for the curve correction, and that's all great. But really, what I got is the biggest thing for me was that tendon dry needling.
Tell us a little bit about how the tendon dry needling surprised you as we did your curve check recently.
Yeah, so this is probably the most amazing part. I had cervical kyphosis. I had like a backward bend, or an S curve, didn't I? And I did 1 day of traction in 4 weeks, but I didn't, I still felt it was a bit too early for me. So we just focused on tendon dry needling. And then this morning we did a curve check, and I don't know what's the sign, but I've now just got, that backward bend has gone straight.
Yes.
Which proves, it's not in lordosis yet, but I've not even done any exercise. I've just done tendon dry needling, enjoyed a few pina coladas on the beach, and I've got some lordosis back.
I think it's important to share with people that we made sure that you were in the same kind of a posture. When you came in on day one and I did your first DMX, you might have even been trying to stand in a little bit better posture, because you can see in the photo next to the curve. And then today, when we redid your curve check, I was like, all right, just completely be relaxed. Don't try to take a good posture. Don't try to take a bad one. And you're just sitting there, and now your curve is completely straight when before it fell forward.
Yeah.
And that's just from reactivating the tendon so the muscles can elongate. Because when the tendons have a chronic degenerative process, from you showing me how you sat like this for hours upon hours upon hours, building this amazing tech company that serviced 20,000 charities, that was an incredible, just addition to ways that people could give back to their community. And over time, those tendons get stretched. And the interesting thing, Matt, is that when tendons stretch, it's not very much visible, like they elongate 2 times. They just barely stretch. And when they stretch, the little tiny pores where diffusion usually lets blood in, which brings healing to tendon when you overuse it or injure it, those pores get closed to the fact where no more blood can get into that area. And so now it stops the healing process. So when we facilitate a little tiny hole into that tendon, and there's a neural connection that the brain kind of wakes up to go there, but also we allow blood that's rich in platelets and has, PRP typically has maybe 2 to 5 times the concentration of your normal blood. But my school of thought, and the way that I am, is that we already have a pharmacy inside our bodies that can heal almost anything if given the right activation or stimulation. So when we come back to the fact that we irritate those tendons, blood that's been sitting outside there going, please let me in, let me in, let me in, finally gets to rush into that tendon, start the healing process, remove some of those abnormal sympathetic dominant nerves that were telling the muscle, shorten, don't activate all the way because I'm weak, and if you squeeze me too much, I might rupture off the bone. So now those muscles have elongated and they're holding, and your curve's already better just from doing the tendon dry needling for a couple weeks.
And I think like that's a key thing here, is that, I think when you kind of go down the rabbit hole of, neck issues, people either fall into 2 camps. In my experience, it's either the muscles have atrophied or got weak, or the ligaments have got lax or weak. But actually, no one talks about tendons. And in my experience of this, that's been the number one thing to give me stability.
Yeah.
The number one thing.
In movement and ability to hold your head up without feeling like you have to lay down. Yeah. And another interesting point to bring up is that now, today, after doing a couple of weeks of tendon dry needling together, you initially weren't really able to tolerate standing weights too well. So we tried it, and it seemed initially like it was helping a bit, but then you just couldn't reproduce it on your own. And today we ended up, because your curve's already improving, we were able to put you into a weight setup. And how did that go? Just tell us, just genuinely, how did it feel? Just whatever it felt to you.
It just felt incredible. I mean, do you remember, I didn't actually want to leave. I didn't want to even take them off. You had to tell me to take them off and kind of leave the van because it just felt so good. I mean, yeah, and I think the key thing about it for me was when I put this, the weight on my neck here, and then we put was it a 1 pound head weight?
1 pound head weight.
It gave me, I've gone from kyphosis to straight neck in 5 weeks, and then these weights put me into lordosis. And, and I think when I took them off, for the first time in 2 years, I felt these muscles in here just activate, and my head just felt stable. Good. And I can't tell you what I've gone through to try and find a way to isolate strengthening these and actually properly activating them, and it was done in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And it just felt, it's like all my problems go when they fire, all my problems go. You know, so yeah, it felt great, and I couldn't quite. I'm so used to being set back, and like it kind of didn't even feel real. Like looking at it, you said, "Come and look at this," and I could see the lordosis, and I think, sorry, that was what I was going to say. When I've done the Denerol before, and it was way too aggressive for me. I couldn't handle it. But this isn't. I sort of want people to understand it's not aggressive. It actually, all it's doing is resting on your neck, and then you're putting a light head weight on. That's it. It's not an aggressive Denerol. It's just gently pulling you into the perfect posture. And I took it off, and I was like, oh, I want it again. It was like a drug.
Thank you, Matt. And yes, 1 pound on your head, and then 3 pounds with a couple of risers, because we wanted that weight to go through the C4, where we wanted to start to create the lordosis, has proven to be a really good weight setup for you. And there is no one size fits all when it comes to weights. There's no one size fits all when it comes to everybody with loss of lordosis needs to use a Denerol, or everybody with instability needs to get full stability in order to start expressing health. Overall, it's been an incredible story, and thank you so much for sharing. I mean, I'm really delighted that you're doing so much better, that you've had not really more than 1 day during this entire, now I don't even know how many days you've been here, but our first day was 20 days ago together. And you only had 1 day in the last 20 days where you've had to lay down for several hours. I mean, you've literally been doing things every single day and feeling better and better as we go. Is there anything else that you'd like to share? You've been so good at sharing your story. But
there is one thing, actually. I'm just, wait there 1 second. I just wanted to say, I really hope that this would work for me, because I bought something for you in advance, and I just really got you something to say thank you, because like for the first time, I'm going home with some genuine hope for the first time in like 2.5 years. So I've got you an England football kit.
Wow, look at that.
This was worn by England in the Euros final in the last game. We did actually lose the final, but this is the official kit. And the best player wears number 10.
Thank you so much, Matt. That's so kind of you.
Thank you.